Before I really get into any sort of talking, I want to show a quick video. And so watch closely because you do not want to miss the end, I promise. No? That's not it. Okay. Yeah. So you're probably wondering why I chose to show this particular video to start off my POL. And really there's two main reasons. The first reason is because this is a time that I felt fearless. And the second reason is that this is a time that I felt fearless and then fell flat on my face. Coming to this trip, fearlessness was not really a word that I had in my vocabulary in any sort of significant way. And I never really thought about it. But in these last few months and weeks, I've really tried to come up with a definition, and this is sort of where it landed. To me, fearlessness means surrendering completely to the moment and letting go of your ego self for a second. Letting go of the anxiety around being judged or deemed weird or different, or even how you perceive yourself. Fearlessness means opening up without reservation to joy and love, even when that makes you vulnerable, especially when it makes you vulnerable. And so looking back to the beginning of this trip, I think that my first real experience with fearlessness was stepping onto that plane in Columbus, Ohio. I had found this program, I pitched it to my parents, they had agreed, but I realized in that moment that I had to be the one to step onto that plane, and I had to do it alone. And so I made it to orientation, we all got to Guatemala, and we started this much broader conversation about vulnerability, which you all have heard a lot about today throughout all of the presentations. And thinking about this word, I knew that there was a lot of potential for personal growth there for me, but I didn't know exactly what that was or what that looked like for me yet. Although, thinking back again, I think really my second act of fearlessness on this trip was sharing my river of life. Rachel mentioned it, but our rivers of life is basically a time to share all of the people, places, events, things that have shaped us into who we were when we started this program, or at least as much as we could fit into 30 minutes. And so I like to compare this to cliff diving, which is also something that I got to do during orientation. And to me, they're very similar in the sense that you're standing on the top and you know that you should do it, but that doesn't really make it any easier or any more fun. And even though a part of you is saying do it, all the other more rational parts are saying, please no. So I'm gonna skip forward actually a little bit now to my time in Thailand. And in Thailand, I read a book that was really influential on me. And it's a book that a lot of us actually read on this trip, Wild by Cheryl Strayed. It's a memoir, and I was reading this book, and I felt this really deep connection to this book, but I was a little bit confused because on a surface level, there was really nothing that I could easily connect with. It's a memoir about this 28-year-old woman. She lost her mother a few years ago. She had gotten a divorce. She was struggling with heroin abuse, and she just decided that she needed a life reset. And she went on this 3-month-long hike across the Pacific Crest Trail that, no pun intended, she was wildly unprepared for. And I felt this connection, but I was really unsure why, because I couldn't relate to that kind of loss or divorce or drug abuse, and I'm not a hiker. So I was trying to figure it out, and as it went, I sort of started to realize that I was connected to the idea of risk-taking. And I was really intrigued and a little bit enamored by this really almost reckless risk that she took. And so I was figuring this out, but I was still confused about how this applied to me, what that meant for me in my life. And so one day I just got on my journal and I started writing, and I hoped that maybe something would come out on the page that I wasn't able to consciously pull to my mind. And this is actually an excerpt of a journal entry that I wrote on December 19th. I was just thinking about why the theme of risk struck such a chord with me from Wild, and I have an answer. I think deep down, I'm dying to start being more vulnerable. I'm dying to start taking more risks in my life, not because I really want to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, or because I want to change my life in some radical way, but because I want to be able to take ownership of my life. And that is really impossible to do without having faced failure or rejection or criticism. And so right now, I think I'm gonna risk my ego a little bit. I wanna show you guys some videos of me throughout this trip, just doing some stuff. This, this was a video from Halloween. We put up this piñata and we were all trying to get it down, and eventually I went up and they made this new rule that now we were only allowed to kick it. And it was really high, and I knew that I really wouldn't be able to do this, but this is me trying. And yeah, the group really enjoyed that one. Mariah caught it on Snapchat, thank you. This next one is actually with Mariah. We were doing a rope swing in Guatemala. Video should show up in a second. It's frozen. Yeah, it's frozen. One more time. That's awesome. And the really good part of this is what followed. So this next video has become sort of a classic phrase in this group. It's really soft in the background, but listen, you can hear me in the water saying, "Mariah, help me!"
Zach, you know how to swim?
Oh God. This next one is actually, I would say, a more important moment in sort of my understanding of this word fearlessness. This was Loy Krathong, which is a holiday in Thailand where you make these banana boats and you send them off the river and you sort of let go of your negative energy and you receive this blessing from the river spirits. And so we went to the Loy Krathong festival in Nan, and there's this big parade going, and one of the floats that came by was these Thai dancers, and they stopped in front of us, and they're doing this dancing, and eventually the women who work at the home base at CCS in Thailand started pulling us in, and they didn't really speak a lot of English, and so I was trying to say no, but they didn't really get it, and eventually they sort of just broke my resistance, I think, and I sort of started just dancing. You can sort of see. And that's Jack, our country president, behind me. It looks so silly, and it was really silly, but this is actually the first time that I consciously made that connection to fearlessness. Looking back through my journal for this project, that was the first time that I could find the word fearless in my journal. This next one is actually a similar type thing. We were in Adaklu, a rural village in Ghana, for our last week there. And at the end, all these school kids came with their drums, and they were drumming and dancing for us. And eventually, 2 by 2, they started coming and trying to pull us in to dance with them. And at this point in the trip, I sort of knew I had to do it. But that didn't mean I was particularly excited about it. And again, the culture was so different, the type of dancing and the situation was so different, but that feeling of just being liberated and not really caring what I looked like, which it's not great, you'll see, is pretty much the same. Oh, show it again? One more time. Yeah. I like that, yeah. And so all these videos, really they're just pictures and videos of me looking silly, essentially. But more than that, these are some of my favorite memories on this trip, and they're some of my favorite memories really thus far in my life. And I think what I've found to be the connection between all of them is that these are times that I let my guard down, not just in front of the group, but also with the videos. Let it be videoed, and I'm showing it to all of you now. So, yeah. And now comes the really big question of, so what? You went on this really cool gap year where you got to go on rope swings and cliff dive and dance in Thai festivals in rural Ghanaian villages, but unfortunately that's probably not what my day-to-day is going to look like anymore. And so what are you taking home, and what does fearlessness mean after this experience? And that's something that I'm still in the process of thinking about and working on, but I think the first most definite way that I am gonna try to be fearless when I go home is I'm doing a workaway with Molly Fox this summer. So for the month of May, we are going to a Buddhist retreat center in California. We both really connected to Buddhism when we studied it in Thailand, and we wanted to explore more. And so we don't know exactly what we're gonna be doing or where we are or who we're gonna be with, but we've committed to doing this because it's something that we really wanna learn about, and so we weren't gonna let the opportunity pass us by. The next way is at school next year, I'll be going to the Ohio State University. Yeah. And at a big school, it's obviously very easy to get lost in the shuffle. And so that's been something that I've been thinking about academically too. How do I take risks? How do I stand out? And I think what I found to be the answer is take chances. Don't shy away from a class or an internship because it's too hard or I don't think I'll get it. And just not being afraid of failure and rejection. And this is very different, but I think the next way that I'm thinking about fearlessness when I go home is through emotional vulnerability. I talked a little bit about doing my river and what that looked like, but I think also just a lot of different types of emotional vulnerability. One that I've been working on a lot on this trip and I'm trying to keep working on when I go home is direct communication and learning how to have conversations that I don't want to have with people. I've become sort of infamous for avoiding those conversations because I don't like bringing up things that make me uncomfortable. And so working on that and trying to keep taking baby steps in that direction. And then this one's a little bit more philosophical, but the next one I think is trying to learn how to embrace the moment as it comes and stay present. And I think one thing that I've learned on this trip is that sometimes these moments come and slap you in the face. It's really hard to miss it when a Thai woman is dragging you into a parade. But other ones are not so obvious, and you really have to be paying attention. You have to be searching your surroundings and find these moments and create them for yourself. And so I think going home, I'm going to be on the lookout for these moments and begin placing myself in spaces where I'm able to have those moments and be present and feel fearless. And lastly, this wouldn't be TBB if I didn't end with a question. And so I have to end with this question. And this is a question that I found in my journal also. And I wrote, I think this was also back in December, but I wrote, how can I live less fearfully and more joyfully? And that's a question that I will continue exploring going home. Thank you. Also, I just felt it would be wrong to only show you this video one time, so I'll just do one more, move back around. Yeah, I was finding sand everywhere for days. It's only one bush and I managed to hit it. Are there any questions? Yeah.
In your time there, was there any person or any group of people that inspired you because of their fearlessness or their vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think everyone on this trip with me, definitely in one way or another, did inspire me in this way. They're all people that chose to go away from home, away from their families for these amounts of time. And they're all people that also were exploring that idea of vulnerability and what that meant for them, which I think for all of us required a lot of fearlessness. And so I think I found a lot of inspiration from the group. Yeah. Yeah.
Zach, I think you're a pretty good dancer, actually. So, but can you talk a little bit about direct communication? I mean, I love those words, but what did you guys learn? What does that mean?
Basically, so a lot of our conversation around direct communication was about how to confront someone without putting them on the defensive or without sort of making someone like feel bad, but raising issues that you feel like need to get out in the open. And I'm not a very confrontational person, as pretty much anyone who knows me can vouch for. And so a lot of my sort of issue in learning around this was learning about or trying to figure out how to have those conversations when I felt like just by the nature of having a conversation it might be hurtful or damage a relationship. And so that was, I think, an issue that I encountered. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like, in confronting that during this trip, do you feel like you re-examined your life before TVB and thought there were a lot of conversations that I wish I had had but didn't, or I should have had?
That's a good question.
Thank
I
you.
don't. Full of them. I don't know. I think certain ones have definitely popped in my head, but I haven't spent a lot of time actually exploring that. So I'll put that on my list. Yeah. Thank you.